Hey everyone, welcome to this week's podcast. I am Charlotte Milne, run and strength coach.
And I'm Kim Moffat, health and run coach.
And we are from CMF Running. So yeah, like I said, welcome to this week's podcast. Today we're talking a big talked about sort of topic. We are going to talk about the sort of training /app form of coaching versus actually having a one-on-one coach. We noticed, especially on like Run Aotearoa, and I think it's just a general, like I said, talked about topic, that, you know, what's the pros and cons between the two. So we thought we would clear some of that up today.
Because there's so many apps now that it can be a little bit overwhelming, and but the runners app seems to be the one that people tend to gravitate towards, and from the looks of it, it looks really detailed and specific, and it sort of gives you some strength work and different sorts of plans from like 5K up to a marathon, doesn't it?
No, actually, it's 5K to like multi-day ultras.
Oh, well, there you go.
They've really, they've really, put a lot of thought into their sort of webpage, into their app, and giving you a lot of detail about all sorts of things that come up in your running, including strength and running, at different times of day and weather and all those sort of frequently asked questions. So they've thought about it all, and they've put it on the website, which is very informative. It's very informative.
A lot of information, and it seems quite easy to use as well, from what I've noticed. And I think you can plug in sort of like your days that you can run, and how many days you want to run. But you don't speak to a real person, which I guess is one of the differences between being coached and not being coached, and using a runner's app. So I guess it depends on your personality type, whether you want to have someone to talk to, or whether you just want to plug in numbers and see what happens.
Yeah, definitely. I think, when it's because they have like questionnaires, right? So it sort of relies on quite a degree of like humility, actually, and in real, being realistic. If quite often, a classic one that I've heard, especially with the runner app, is sort of like the marathon plan. And I think, with a marathon, it is quite common that we have like an outcome, a time outcome, that we would like to achieve, sort of like the 4s, the 3.5s, the 3s, and if you really want to get there, then, and it's kind of like, it doesn't seem that far away, maybe you're sort of 20, 15 minutes away from that next key kind of like sort of outcome, that key outcome. You're like, yes, sweet, this year I'm going to get a 3:30, because last year I got a 3:50. I'm really going to try this hard this year, and I'm going to do this plan, and I'm going to get there. So, we're not saying that a person that did do a 3:50 one year and then can't go back and do 3:30 the next year, but like, I suppose an app doesn't actually know if you can or can't, if you put it in, I think there are,
and the
like,
app doesn't know your lifestyle. It doesn't know your lifestyle, what you do for a job, like with what's happening. So that's a big difference, I think, as well.
Definitely, yeah, because we make our gains in recovery, and if you've got like a really like stressful life, got a family, you got a big corporate kind of job, you've got this and that, that a coach can kind of do a plan that sort of makes it manageable for you to achieve
Yeah.
your outcomes of running, whereas an app may not take in like all the life stress.
Mm.
And yeah, from quite a lot of like experience with like clients, even if a client doesn't necessarily tell us like that this or that's going on, we can kind of see it
Yeah.
in their runs or their lack of runs.
Yeah.
Um, Whereas maybe an app wouldn't be like, "Hey, Susie, you've missed a run. Are you feeling okay?" You know, it's probably just giving
Yeah.
you like a notifications like, "You've missed your run. You've missed your run. You've missed your run."
Mm.
You know, and that may not be
And that creates
very.
stress. That creates that stress. And I think, like life happens as well.
Mm,
And so if you can't fit in like your long run, that creates stress for some people. And they are trying to work out when they're going to fit it in. So it's like they're starting to think. And so, like, when having a coach, we do all that thinking for you, and we can sort of tweak things and make things work for whatever's happening in that sort of time.
mm,
Yeah, so that sort of it's taken away that stress, because no running plan or training plan is perfect. Like, things happen always. We get sick, our kids get sick, things happen. And yeah, it's just having that communication all the time with a coach.
mm.
And yeah, because the app doesn't know. I don't know if there's you can tell them at the other end when they're planning. I don't know, like, it's just there's no communication, and so you just start stressing, which doesn't help at all. Yeah.
For sure. And we don't need stress when it comes to our running, because quite often we have started running to get away from the stress.
Yeah.
So we want it to be like a nourishing part of your life. We want to get better as well, but we also like want
Yeah.
it to be fulfilling. Um,
Yeah.
and
And
I
there's more chance of
suppose,
getting injured as well, I guess. There's more because you're trying to push yourself. And so, you can't, and going back to that, you've got to be realistic about your goals. So say you want to do a 3:30 hour marathon, but your last marathon was 4.5, and you want to, and like that was a year ago, like you were saying before. But that is a big difference. We're not saying that it's not achievable, but you have to sort of break it down as well. And so if you put in like a 3:30, it will spit out maybe unrealistic paces for where you are now in your training. And you may get injured. Yeah, and it just sets you back, I think.
for sure, for sure. So yeah, that's a big sort of like key difference than between sort of like an app and a coach, is that it's sort of runner operated opposed to coach and runner sort
Mm.
of like operated. um
Mm.
it's kind of like when with us at CMF Running, we do like a coach call with the client. We get to know the the client a little bit, and we also can look at previous data potentially, and we can set up like personal like pace zones and also heart rate zones and things as well. And so there's just a bit more of like a human to human transaction.
Mm.
And we can we are not that like apps don't have like they're not, there's people working behind them. There's like they know that
Yeah.
this pace and this pace equals this. And but I suppose what I'm trying to say is that like we kind of can sort of do sort of more realistic sort of plans to suit that kind of
Mm.
person and where they are in their journey of running. um
That's right.
and just sort of see if things are matching up between sort of like what you want and the reality of where your running is at.
Yeah.
Um, And
That was one of the things that the Runners app didn't have was the heart rate zones. It didn't have, there was no sort of base training, there was no heart rate zone set. So it's just more about that pace stuff. So yeah, and I think there was another comment about, you know, the speed sessions were just too fast as well. So again, it's just, yeah, that's sort of the other difference as well. Like, it's more personal when you talk to a coach and they set your paces and your heart rate zones for you, not through like some, you know, the common, you know, mathematical formula, you know, with the age and everything like that. There's, you know, it's just, we do tests to make sure that we have your heart rate zones and paces for you, not for the person next door.
yeah,
um,
yeah,
and that
that's
makes a difference, I think.
100%, 100%. And it was, yeah, through working through reading some reviews about especially the Runner app, I suppose the overarching theme was the intensity of the workouts, and quite far out as well, especially with, so I think a really good thing about the Runner app that I've sort of found, and I think this would be, you know, quite appropriate. Like, I even did a few years ago, I did a 5K plan with a person called Run with Meg, and it was this 5K plan, and I did improve my 5K. Had some wicked hard, like hard sessions in it, and I got to the outcome of getting a faster 5K time. So I do think that sort of apps can be really good for that short stuff, short
Yeah.
sort of 5K, even maybe up to sort of like half marathon for some people, sort of like that beginner to intermediate. I think that's also another thing that I heard, and I think this is quite right with, like, you know, as as a runner kind of progresses in their running, like, what they need gets more sort of technical, actually, or more like personal. And like, when you're a new runner, basically just going for a run, like, it will make you fitter. But when you've got that
Yeah.
really good base of fitness and you've put in a few years of like really good training, then it gets harder. So that's when like a coach versus an app maybe like way like more beneficial.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, if you're like fairly new to running and you've got like goals up to a half marathon, especially, then maybe, and it's obviously way more, well, it is more affordable, and they're good quality nowadays, like things like Runner app, it's probably like entirely appropriate for you. Can take out the thinking, and it can get you to that outcome, right? You know, like especially like a 5K, like improve my 5K, it's going to probably get you to that outcome.
Yeah.
And that's like awesome. It's awesome that that's, you know, available to, you know, nowadays.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's a really good thing about the Runner app and apps in general.
I guess if
Such a
you're
good
not sort
topic.
of like seeing your, like, you want to, like, after that, you know, you've done your 5K and then you want to keep improving, and then you don't see improvements and you want to have all these goals, you know, that's sort of a place where you have that conversation with, you know, a real person, and, you know, form that, I keep going back to, you know, you form that relationship, because it's you find out more about yourself through running, when you have that relationship with a coach, you know, looking at like nutrition, looking at stress levels, looking at like sleep and all that, you know, like, and that can all impact your running. So yeah, just having, and that sort of develops over time as well. It's not just like your first conversation and your coach knows everything about you.
No,
But yeah, like, if you see, like, if you really want to achieve, you know, your goals, or yeah, that's sort of when you can sort of step away from the apps a little bit and form a relationship with a coach. And it just sort of helps with that motivation as well, because there are days where you have not so good runs, but like there could be reasons for that as well. Going and it's just having being able to communicate with a real person, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. I found this really quite funny. I found it quite funny, like review online. And it
Oh,
was
yeah.
sort of talking about sort of like I'll read it out to you. It was sort of talking about um sort of like their experience with the app, and sort of like I'll just read it out to you.
Yeah.
It says, and it's talking about the Runner app, and I said I signed up to the plan because I wanted some motivation and structured training for the Chicago Marathon. Initially, I enjoyed the sessions. However, I soon found the intensity of the speed sessions and lack of recovery tough on both my mental and physical health. The ticking off each run on the plan became addictive, and even when my body wanted/needed extra rest, I felt that the plan was watching me. For the final 3 weeks of the plan, I decided to go back to my own training, and I enjoyed it so much more. I was still
Mm.
running the equivalent mileage that the plan had suggested, as well as speed sessions, but I was doing them on my own terms. Within days, I felt that arbitrary pressure had been lifted, and I actually enjoyed the final few weeks of marathon training. I found that
Yeah.
really funny. So, um, her she was like the addiction of like just like tick boxing these
Yeah.
runs, um and that's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure to like she was kind of saying, so you're missing the point of like running, right? You're missing the point.
Yeah.
It's no longer
Because running
enjoyable.
shouldn't be, yeah, that's right. Running should not be a stressful activity, it shouldn't, yeah. Yes, I think that's, people do fall into that a little bit. And that's funny. That's quite a funny review. And then obviously she noticed the difference between, like just moving out of that, she was able to do that and noticed a difference. And she probably did a really good marathon time in the end.
Probably, yeah, and I think that I think that's a sort of like a common misconception about coaching is that um that a coach is going to like get that whip out and like give you a hard time if you've missed the session.
Mm.
um and the reality is that like sure, like it doing most of your sessions is a good thing, and that's something that we want for clients, and we're going to
Yeah.
kind of like maybe we're going to ask you sort of like those why are you missing these sessions and all that kind of thing. Is it
Mm.
too hard, or is this not what you want to do anymore? And but it's because we care,
Yeah.
and I suppose like an app, um it's not a person, right? So it doesn't care. It just wants you to do that run so that it's like, and then you do that run and then it go get a tick, and then you feel good about yourself. It just wants you
Mm.
to sort of tick things off and give you a gold star at the end, which can create sort of like this unnecessary pressure. And I suppose when it's a big goal, like when you're heading towards like a marathon or an ultra, like there's a sort of like there's a lot of pressure anyway. Like being
Yeah.
coached by a coach or an app, like it's intense. It can be
Mm.
intense. You're feeling like I think long story short, like what we're sort of saying is that running is like a holistic experience.
Yeah.
When you And sometimes when you do run, like the reason you do run can come out in your running.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that could be like after you've been running for a couple of years, you may have plateaued and you've tried all sorts of races, ways of running, but you're still plateauing, and like a good coach can be able to be like, hey, I think that there's other things going on, you know.
Yeah.
And that could be like someone later in their journey. So, like when I said before earlier about that new person wanting to improve their 5K, apps are really good because they're not there yet, This is a person that's a
Yeah.
few years down the track.
Mm.
So, yeah, I think.
Yeah. And I think also, like, when you're well, something that we do as well, and probably other coaches do as well, is that, we, come race week, all the nerves start coming in, and or taper, like we talk to people about that, like it's all very normal. But yeah, we just have these conversations with people. Yeah, I mean, I think like the Runners app, they have like the information and everything like that, but sometimes people want to talk to someone, and that helps with the nerves, and and what's your race strategy, and like your own personal race strategy. I don't know whether that the apps spit out that information, or you have to try and work out come race day, am I running, what pace am I running, like in the first, if it's just say a marathon, like the first 32K, and then what, like it's just, it's almost like we just help the whole process, like from start to the finish and everything in between, I think. Yeah. And that can come down to how you fuel, how you like hydration, like things like that, all those sort of questions that are happening in your head, especially taper week, when you're, like your mileage is like dropped off and your brain goes into, just thinking. Yeah, there's information out there and you can read stuff, but having a one-on-one conversation with someone, I know that for myself, I'd rather have a one-on-one conversation rather than try and read what I should be doing, because that's just quite universal. It's quite universal. It's not and like my coach knows me, so knows my personality.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's again, and I keep going back to it, just that you'd sort of develop that over time, and I think that's it's special as well. So yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I think that's a big sort of, yeah, sort of pro of being coached is just
Yeah.
that relationship with your coach. And um, even within like your coach, like it has to kind of work both ways. It just like there's a lot of running apps out there, there's also a lot of coaches out there nowadays.
Yeah.
So in order to get the most out of your training also is that you have to like gel with your coach, because otherwise it's you're just gonna like butt heads basically, and then sort of like think that coaching doesn't work for me, and it could just be it's no fault of the coach as well. Like I don't get along with every person in the world, and I'm sure like you don't either. So and because there are so many coaches, maybe there is someone that doesn't quite work for you, and like we've kind of said, like if you want to get into like the more personal sort of like aspects of your life, if you don't feel comfortable around this person, then you're just going to not sort of grow. So keep that in mind as well. Like, choose the coach that works for you because they have the similar values than you. That you like the way that they coach. There's lots of different ways of coaching as well, and so just do your research, but also at the same time, like you got to stick with things, to get the most out of like out of the
What you want,
experience.
really. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
So
think one of, yeah. one of the things that we sort of say as well is that, to trust the process, don't focus so much on the outcome, like the outcome will happen, whatever the outcome is. But yeah, just going through the steps towards that goal, I think. Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's really important, and that's helped me, like, personally. Yeah, and at the time, sometimes it can be frustrating when someone's trying to tell you what to do. But yeah, it does. Yeah, you just have to trust what your coach is saying. And they also explain the purpose behind every run. Like, easy runs are there for a reason. Like, you don't have to go hard out all the time. Like, those easy runs are helping with those faster runs. Yeah, so it's just educating people, I think. And the apps do have it, but having that personal conversation, yeah, it just helps.
Definitely, yes, that's a really key thing that you just said about the education. And yes, like, people sort of hear things in different ways. And the way that you explain things can, like, yeah, be different from person to person. And I suppose an app probably doesn't do that. They just have like one sort of like definition of an easy run. Whereas like, it's sort of putting it in terms that the person can kind of understand the end, and yeah, that's a coach is really good for that. The education, like, most people like to know why they're doing things, what is the purpose behind this? And then they sort of gain more understanding for them, like, personally as well. And yeah, so good one.
But your easy runs are different from my easy runs. So, like, again, going back to, that heart rate stuff, that comes into play as well. So, everyone's different, like, yeah, your easy runs are like faster probably than my easy runs, but there's still easy runs. Like, it's just, yeah. So, yeah, I think that's a big difference as well.
Yeah, and I think, like, to talking about heart rate is sort of like it's an entirely different sort of like podcast, really. But yeah, like, doing heart rate runs, is really beneficial for your base fitness. Pace, 6:30 on a hill versus on the flat is an entirely different experience. Whereas like, heart rate, if you stay within a certain zone, like, it doesn't really matter, like, because you're still getting the benefit of that sort of aerobic base building. But yeah, so that's something that like, we're really big on at CMF, like, heart rate training. And yes, like, like road stuff, there is a lot of pace stuff, but there's also some aerobic stuff as well. And yeah, so that's something that we believe is like a really good way to build fitness, is using heart
for
rate.
sure. Yeah. So we're not saying that the apps are bad. We're not saying that the apps are bad. Like, I think, they definitely have a place. Like, everything has its place. But I guess some of the questions that you ask, I guess, if you are using an app, like, if you're not improving, like, if you've lost motivation, if you're like struggling with recovery, if you're getting injured all the time, like, you've got to ask yourself, do I need to, have I gone up to the next level in my running? And I need that conversation. Yeah, I think those are the sort of things that, because that happens. Like, we grow as runners, and they have a place, and they can, you can still achieve your goals with the apps. But I think, if you are, you want to smash some goals, or you don't see any improvements, etc., just what I just said, maybe you can engage with someone and just sort of say, this is what I want, this is what's happening. And then it flows on from there. And I think a lot, I don't know if any other coaches do, but we do. We've got a free coach call just to feel us out. And I think, that's sort of good to have as well. So it's no obligation to sign up or anything like that. It's just having that conversation. It always starts with a conversation and then just flows on from there.
Yeah, that's very true. Just what Kim said. There's pros and cons of everything. It just depends on what you want for your running and where you're at. And I think also, that's what I was going to say, is that coaching with a coach that you get along with is an experience that is probably one that you have to do to know truly what it is like. And it's if you remain teachable, you will forever grow. And that's been having someone like a coach is just really awesome. It's if the coach cares and puts it, you will grow. And that's exciting because you never quite know where that might also transpire into other areas of your life as well. And so I think that's a big key takeaway, I think, between an app and a coach is the experience that you're looking for. If you're looking for a transactional, tick boxy kind of experience with a little bit of personal, or if you're looking for a whole lot of personal with a little bit of tick box, then maybe coaching is for you. I think another thing that is sort of a big difference is being coached is it's just if you can stay in it for life. There's no, you don't have to be having racing to be coached. You can base train and you can build, and whereas maybe having which is a really key part of training, right, is base building. But maybe if it's an app, maybe sometimes the app's base plans are not there, or it's just okay, I got to that race, then I'm going to stop running and I'm just going to go back to running. And then, you may not be getting the most out of it because of X, Y, and Z. So, I think.
Yeah, I think that sums it up really well.
Yeah. This is a big topic, and we may not have touched on every aspect of the pros and cons and the good and the bad of being coached versus having a training plan. And I'm sure we'll do another podcast another time talking more about it. But hopefully that's given you some insight to the pros and the cons and the differences and the similarities. Not that there's actually many similarities. I suppose the differences. Yeah,
I think so. And I think it does, depending on what sort of personality type you are, some people gravitate towards the apps because it's just easy, it's there, etc. But if you want to grow and you want to have more engagement with someone, maybe being coached. And as we, there's no right or wrong. It's just where you are at on your sort of journey towards running. But it's more than just running as well. Whether you have an app or not. So yes.
Very good.
Anyway, I think we've hopefully cleared up a few questions. Yes.
Yes, I think so. I think that's been. I think so, and I think we better leave it there. Otherwise, we might be going round and round in circles. This is our new little adventure of doing podcasts together. without Chris. He wasn't even
Yeah.
here to set up today, so I feel a
Yeah.
little like almost
Yeah.
nervous
Finding
actually.
our feet.
Get off
Oh, we
this
did
and go.
good.
But anyway, that's enough about us and our quirkiness. If you want to find me, on social media, I am known as Trail Girl Charlotte. I'm on Instagram. You'll find me on YouTube, Trail Girl Charlotte, where I have workouts and this podcast will be uploaded to. You can find me on Strava if you like, Charlotte Milne, and on Spotify as well. It's Trail Girl Charlotte. All
Cool.
social.
And you'll find me. I'm on Facebook, Kimberly Moffat. On Instagram, my handle is Good Witch Runs. And that's all. Oh, and Strava, you'll find me as well, Kimberly Moffat. So, yes. But if you're like any advice or just even a free call, like a free coach call, you can go on to our website, cmfrunning.nz, and just book a call. Just see what it feels like to have that conversation.
Awesome. Okay, we'll leave it there. Thanks, Kim.
I think we should. Until next time.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.